Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Move TV. It's my guest today, Rachel Philpotts' turn to be on the couch, as it were. Although, what are you sat on there?
Just on an office chair.
On an office chair to talk to us for Move TV about what it is that she does. Rachel, welcome. You're looking very tanned.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the light, if it's the ring light, to be honest. I think it might be on a warm setting. Hang on.
Oh, that's where you say yes. I've been.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I'm very. I've just got a natural glow, Graham.
So tell people that haven't met you before on any of the social media channels that we're going out on now, what is it that you do?
So hi, I'm Rachel. So I'm a nutritionist and mood expert. I run a functional medicine clinic where we help tired and wide women to step off the burnout roller coaster and basically just feel, wake up energized, lots of mental clarity. And we do that using state-of-the-art functional and genetic testing. And that enables us to create ultra personalized health programs.
Now, before we get into the science of that a little bit, let's go back to what you were saying there about the burnout. How much of a problem is that? How many people are we kind of seeing out there that are going through this?
Yeah, it's big and it's increasing and it's costing us an awful lot of money as well. So not only is it having detrimental health effects, the global economy is billions. In fact, I had the exact number to my fingertips the other day because it's in the book. And can I remember it right now? No. But yeah, it definitely is something that is increasing. The more kind of, the faster paced life that we lead, the more burnout is becoming a more of a phenomenon. And it's actually not a recognized medical condition, but it's becoming really widely, recognized as a occupational syndrome. So the World Health Organization, for example, recognizes it as this syndrome, but doesn't go quite as far as saying it's a medical condition. And without it being a medical condition, you can't then be diagnosed with it. And without a diagnosis, it's hard to then treat, if you like, through traditional means. So yeah, it's growing. People are talking. The word burnout as well, by the way, is not a new word. It's kind of in the research from a science point of view. It's been used since the 70s, but it dates back as far as Shakespeare. So he uses it in one of his books, The Passionate Pilgrim. And in fact, I think the word is actually used in the Old Testament as well. I can't even remember which part, but I've got the actual, paragraphs. So it's not a new concept, but it's definitely
people are busy getting Google up now and search terms to find out where burnout comes from. If you do find out and you're watching, do let us know. That would be tremendous. But I mean, although burnout,
Exodus.
There you go. Although burnout in itself isn't a diagnosed or diagnosable condition, surely there are symptomatic sort of or other conditions that we would associate with burnout. Or what are some of the sort of things from a sort of physiological point of view that we might associate with somebody that's feeling burnt out?
Yeah, I mean, from a kind of definition perspective, burnout is like emotional exhaustion, occupational cynicism, and a reduced level of performance. So they are kind of the three criteria for burnout. But in terms of the kind of symptom presentation, it definitely overlaps with other stress in stress-derived mood disorders. So if you think of things like anxiety and depression, which often arises as a result of chronic stress, and the symptomology is quite overlapping. So you've got that kind of tension, fatigue, or exhaustion, that kind of tense. I kind of use the word tired and wired a lot because it is that kind of wired feeling of like not being able to switch off, always on the go, stressed, not sleeping, and then the tired, overwhelming feeling of exhaustion and not be able to kind of motivate yourself. And that loss of interest that comes with more of a depressive state. So it's kind of the researchers are actually still arguing whether burnout is distinct or whether it's an overlapping condition with things like anxiety and depression because the symptoms are so similar. the unique factor being with burnout is it's generally there is an element of occupational stress that is involved, whereas obviously you can become depressed or anxious without occupational stress. That is where the kind of dividing line is at the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I mean, obviously, you know, in my past that, you know, I was involved with workplace assessments, and still having that conversation with lots of people, you know, and one of the things that within the workplace, people within that sector are continuing to look at is more of a holistic approach. So it's always been in the past that we've typically kind of siloed support factors for people and actually gone, well, let's look at mental, maybe this is a mental health issue, or maybe this is a, maybe this is a physiological issue, and, you know, maybe they've got musculoskeletal disorders or whatever else. But, you know, from experience, I tended to find that actually people are people first and foremost, and actually quite often when you started to talk to them and you started to delve into what was the causal of all of this, you know, there would be elements of everything in there. So if somebody has got a bad back at work, you know, what's that coming from? Maybe that's partly caused by the fact that they may be neurodiverse, for example. They may struggle with how they receive information through the screen or something like that. That means they might work longer. They might work longer in a particular position. That builds into anxiety that they're not getting the job done properly, etc. And then all of these things together can cause them to feel burnt out, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, isn't it? With something like stress, you know, that we all know, I guess this is why it's becoming a global phenomenon, because we are all working intensively more in a different way than we did historically from hunter-gatherer times. So, you know, we do think about it as like occupational stress, and that is a huge factor in burnout. But like you just said there, stress has come from all different directions. It's not just work. You know, it can also be things going on at home, or it could be what the stress that you're putting into your body, because your brain doesn't distinguish between an irate boss or a agitated customer any more than it distinguishes between binge drinking or a Mars bar or a McDonald's, that kind of thing. It doesn't matter. The brain is gonna, or maybe you've had, the children are just not going to sleep at night, and that's kind of waking you up. All of that is stress, and your brain just responds in exactly the same way. It's, I'm under threat. I need to initiate this response in the body. So it all adds up, doesn't it, to that kind of context of what in the contextual environment in which the burnout is happening, and it's not just occupational stress.
Yeah. Now, I said we'd get into the kind of sciencey bit. We kind of already have.
Sorry.
But, no, it's fine. But, again, when it comes to things like what we eat, what we're putting in our bodies, etc., of course, all of that's linked in as well, because, if we're busy, we typically will not take time to sort of, let's do a straw poll here. How many people that are watching this at whatever time of day it is, at lunchtime today, did you actually stop work, or did you just grab whatever you brought into work? Now, you might have actually prepared that properly the night before, or in the morning. You might have made yourself a lovely salad or something else. But if not, you might have just grabbed whatever was available to you, and that might be in the way of convenience food.
Yeah.
And you're typically eating that sat down, probably in front of the computer, not taking any break away from the computer to eat it. So you're not even digesting it necessarily properly, because well, true, it's going in the gob, but that's about it. And I've seen terrible examples of that in the past when I visited offices. People going out to food place down the road, appearing back with 6 sausage rolls and 5 donuts, and eating the whole lot in one sitting before they carry on for work in the afternoon. Blood sugar levels going right up, right down, etc. it becomes a kind of vicious cycle. So you're doing actual testing on people,
Yeah.
and what's that actually showing?
Well, there's a diverse range of things. So we test in blood, we test blood, we test actually, let me go back a bit. We do nutrient level testing, and we do like a general broad brush health screen, so we can kind of get a context of what's going on. So like liver function, kidney function, blood count, that kind of thing. We'll do stool testing, so we can understand what's going on in the gut in terms of how well someone's producing the enzymes that help them break down the food that they just wolfed down at lunchtime that you just mentioned there. So are they actually absorbing any of the nutrients in that food? And then further down the chain, then are they is there any inflammation at the gut wall caused by the stress of the food that they're eating? What's the profile of their microbiome look like in terms of good bugs versus bad bugs versus the really damn ugly bugs, and things like that. So that's in the gut, and then we test the hormones, and the hormones is probably the vital one to look at, because we're looking at the stress hormones and we're looking at reproductive hormones to understand what's going on. So it's basically giving us a really broad biochemical picture of what's going on in that individual, and then we can then get really focused in terms of, well, how do we actually help that person? Because what I find in clinic, for example, is that people come in and they're really, really stressed, and I'll expect, for example, their adrenal profile to come back as someone who's in a kind of high cortisol state. And then what's really surprising is we actually then see them in a low cortisol state, because they've actually burned through all that cortisol, and they're perhaps not, the stress response isn't being mounted effectively. And the way you would help someone with low cortisol is very different from how you would help someone with high cortisol. So it just gives you that information so you can be really precise in terms of what's going to help that person the best. Does that make sense?
It does. And do you know what? As you're saying it, I'm thinking so many people probably need this, because, and I'm not being funny here, but we've literally just had news this week that yet another doctor surgery in our local town is shutting down, even though it's an absolute struggle to get into a doctor's. If you phone up today, it's a month before you actually get an appointment, for example. And even then, being fair to GPs, if you do get in and you do start to have tests, you'll probably have a blood screen, but it will be for it will be a general blood screen to begin with, and you can have your blood pressure taken. But the degree of kind of testing that you're doing there, you're getting quite close to the problems very quickly, which you wouldn't necessarily get if you went to your GP, and it could be some time before you start to get any kind of answers.
Yeah, and I think this is the difference. So when you go to the GP, they're screening for they're screening for disease states. So they want to know, is something medically wrong that we can diagnose and treat, and so they're gonna test in that way. And sometimes they'll only test for a certain thing. So, and that's because they're restricted by, they need to justify why they're testing, and then these things cost money. So their blood screen, for example, might only have like 4 markers on it, compared to if you came to like ours, where we would do quite a broad screen, because we're looking generally, not generally, more again, if something like fatigue, for example, can be driven by so many different things. So we're investigating what that can be, and we're not looking for disease states. We're looking for functional imbalances, which kind of sit below disease states, because you could go to the doctor, have a load of tests done, and they'll say, oh, they all come back normal, and then you kind of get sent on your way, but you still feel knackered and stressed. So what's going on? And then so that's when people come to us. We're then taking a bit of a different, looking at it through a different lens. We're looking at it in terms of optimal health rather than disease state, to say, well, okay, you might be feeling this way because these nutrient levels aren't right, or your thyroid hormone is medically normal, but it's actually, not optimal, and that could be contributing to the way you're feeling. And so it is giving people, it is kind of like deep diving health, at a different kind of level. But it's not about one or the other. And I have to be like really careful about this, because I work alongside GPs, and the functional medicine approach is definitely a complementary one rather than a separate one. And there are often cases where we'll be working with somebody who's got functional imbalances, and they might, really need some support. So the GP will be prescribing medication alongside what we're doing. In other cases, they may already be on medication that they feel isn't right, and then we'll be kind of working with them to kind of optimize things so that they feel better, so they don't necessarily need the medication anymore. So it's definitely a partnered approach, and I almost wish it could be a bit more joined up, because I think I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was saying how in America, not everywhere, and by the way, I'm not saying that the US health system is perfect. It's not at all. But in America, you can access traditional medicine and functional medicine side by side, often under one roof, but you via your insurance, depending, of course, which insurance you're on. But you can access these things, whereas in this country, that's not the case. So I say I'm working along side by side along GPs, but it's not quite that synergistic, and if only it could be, because
although you wish it could be. Yeah,
absolutely. But at the moment, what I'm doing is only available privately, so it's not quite the same.
And I'm sure a lot of practitioners in lots of different areas would like to see that. I've recently got these, so I had to go and see an optician's, and I'm sure that they would love to be able to send notes to and from, to a doctor's and kind of work, but it doesn't work like that. They can give you the advice. They can say, go and see your GP about this, but it's not like everybody's kind of like sharing the same space. So it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about, you're not just this amazing person that does all of this wonderful stuff with well-being, but you also write a book. You spent an enormous amount of time sort of last year scribbling away. How's that all gone?
Yeah, it's going really well. In fact, actually last week I handed the final manuscript in. So at the end of last year, it was the kind of beta draft, which is basically when it's in a state to be read by somebody else. And then during December, the development editor was reading it and feeding back in terms of areas it could be kind of changed and shaped differently. So I've been working on those revisions for the last couple of weeks, and that got handed in on Friday. And I've had a bit of a nervous wait over the weekend, because the publisher was going to review it to make sure I'd actually, I'd actually done all the things that was asked of me before it could go into the copy editing phase. And I've had the green light this morning, so I'm like, whew, feeling quite relieved about that. So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Can you give everybody a little taste? What's the book going to be called?
So the book is called The Burnout Bible: How to Combat
There you go.
an Emotional Overwhelm Naturally. So it's basically putting all that knowledge into a book and making it more accessible, because I feel like, as I just hit the nail on the head about, I'm obviously constrained with a number of people that I can help with what I do. So the book for me was about kind of giving back and putting all the information that I could into a easy digestible format, so that people become more aware of what can be done. Obviously we're all different, and that's what the clinic is for, because it's very personalized in terms of what's going on. But there are definitely elements of understanding what burnout is and what the possible imbalances could be, and then implementing some general principles that may be helpful. And that's what's basically the book is.
Well, I can't wait to read it, for one. Now, we have a comment here from Caroline. Rachel's been tremendous help to me. After a few months of working with her, my mood and energy levels have improved dramatically.
Oh, Caroline, thank you. You're going to make me cry. I'm very vulnerable after all this writing.
But that's tremendous. It's lovely, though, isn't it, when you get that kind of feedback from people? But, it sounds like what you're doing is so vital and important. Now, Maria said, I would love to find out more regarding the menopause. There you go. I mean, is that something that you're finding, again, is the particular the dialogue around menopause now certainly is opening up. I mean, it's great that we're actually seeing more and more posts about it on social media, especially LinkedIn, etc. And from a management point of view, we're finally starting to see managers taking ladies that are going through the menopause seriously, in terms of there needs to be a proper dialogue here. But is that a group of people that you really want to see doing more work with?
It definitely it links in clinic, because we see it a lot anyway in the hormone testing that we do. And there's a link with burnout too. So burnout can, with chronic stress, well, just with the basic stress response, just so that everybody knows, when we're stressed, we're kind of releasing cortisol, and that's getting us ready to kind of deal with a threat. And when we're dealing with a threat, we're in survival mode. And when in survival mode, there are certain bodily functions that aren't as important as survival is. So, for example, it's not as important to be digesting when we're trying to run away from a bear. It's definitely not important to be doing any repair work, so our immune function is down-regulated. And then we definitely don't want to be reproducing when we're running away from that threat. So reproductive function is another one that's down-regulated. So in clinic, we see reproductive hormone imbalance with cortisol imbalance are going hand in hand. And it's a bit like chicken and egg, which came first, because obviously age can factor into that as well as stress. And with burnout, it's kind of an emerging area of research at the moment in terms of, can burnout cause early menopause? And there's definitely studies out there that it can create menopause mimicking symptoms, because it can suppress. And often we'll see clients come in and their hormone levels are low, and this is where it's kind of, if someone who's burnt out had gone to the GP and they kind of looked at it as like a mood disorder, then their approach would be an antidepressant or psychotherapy. But if someone comes into clinic, and I've had clients like this who've been recommended an antidepressant, haven't felt that was right, we've tested them, and then their female hormones are on the floor, you're like, okay, so that's what's going on. So that's what we need to support you with there. Whereas if that person had just gone on antidepressant, it wouldn't have done anything for them at all. So, like, we actually gave them that kind of root cause, and instead spoke to the GP about some body identical HRT. So that was, it's kind of,
oh, that's brilliant.
Answer your question or not, Graham, but we certainly do see perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause in clinic, because it just, with the hormones, it all goes hand in hand.
Maria says, what about significant life moments? Can they also react with your hormones?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all unique beings, and functional medicine takes the approach of looking at that individual, the person in front of them, and you are a combination of your genetics, so what you're kind of, or your, what we call antecedents. So these are the things that you're kind of almost predisposed or vulnerable to. You're also part what's going on at the moment, so all that environmental stuff that I've just talked about before, and all the biochemical testing. And then thirdly, you're also what's gone on in your life. So your journey is different to my journey, and what brings us all to wherever we are now is different. And definitely, grief, or any kind of trauma is, can be huge triggering events through life that can change how our hormone patterns behave. And if you're somebody, for example, who before a trauma was kind of managed stress really well, and then after trauma doesn't manage stress so well, or perhaps you become what I call hypervigilant, so your brain is constantly looking for threats where it wasn't looking for threats before, then that's again, a different presentation that can affect everything that's going on in your body, not just your hormones, but all function, but it all presents in different ways to different people. So yes is the short answer. Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times, I just want to quickly pick up on this before we talk about, hello, thanks, camera. Before we talk about move, but you mentioned sort of the fact that, once upon a time we were hunter-gatherers. You kind of mentioned the fact that where we came from in terms of our ancestry, really. And I think what's quite interesting is that, there may be some people out there that kind of assume that as humans we evolve, and that actually, with time we'll turn into different creatures that can cope with this, etc. In fact, on one of the talks that I did last week, we brought up an image that somebody had produced about how we might evolve for the future to deal with work with like a second set of eyelids to cope with screens rather than the fancy glasses, clawed hands and all of those sort of things. But actually, although work changes, although kind of, technology changes and we transform with technology, the truth is that actually a lot of the time, in order to actually understand how we deal with all of this stuff, we do need to go back and actually kind of really understand where we do come from as humans, because actually some of that doesn't change. I remember doing some studying. I did an IOSH qualification where we looked at why people, kind of hoard stuff on the desks the way that they do. And it's actually to do with the fact that, in a way, that kind of hunter-gatherer type thing is to do with the fact that we like to build our cave.
Yeah, it's making them feel safe. Yeah.
We need to have our kind of safe area. And, when we've got kind of an open area where wolves, or managers might attack, we have to build our own safety. It's a really don't you find that it's really interesting that sometimes we do actually need to kind of regress, but look at where we've come from in order to understand how we're going forward.
Yeah, like you said, it absolutely helps us to understand. I think but it's like anything, like if you one, becoming self-aware of what other things are that do stress you out, and then the next thing, having the knowledge to actually understand what is going on in the body, and then those two things enable you to then take action, don't they? Whereas if you don't understand that, and the stress response hasn't evolved since hunter-gatherer times, and whereas technology is rapidly involved, biological evolution is not keeping up with that, and we that's why we are burning out, because we can't cope in the same way that we used to, because the threats are different now, and the stress has moved away from the cave and into the office, and the threat has gone from being a life-threatening bear attack that was like done within 5 minutes, and you hopefully you either didn't survive or you did survive, hopefully, and then you kind of just got on with your day and normal function resumed. Whereas nowadays, the stress is nowhere near as life-threatening as a bear attack, but they are small and they're persistent, and the brain doesn't know what's going on, because it's like, well, I don't know whether I should be pressing the off switch now, because it's just the stress is longer in duration, or they're just persistent, like over and over again. So yeah, we need to kind of help the brain to understand what is threatening, and also to kind of allow it to switch itself off a little bit and come into that kind of calm, safe state as frequently as possible, to offset all that stress that we've got going on.
Now, the other week on Move Online, which is a weekly support meeting that both you and I go to, you made us all. Well, I'd say made. You didn't make us do it. We volunteered. You invited us all, and we gladly volunteered to meditate with you, which was a tremendous thing. And even people that help other people with burnout need a time to, let go themselves, don't they? And support around them. Is that what Move's been for you?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Every week when you work my clinic is virtual, so everything is all online. So it can be at times quite an isolating experience, and isolation in itself is a stressor. And none of us in this profession are immune to burnout and stress. I certainly am not. It's something I've got to kind of keep an eye on all the time, having burnt out myself in the past. And then, being able to come onto a weekly call with other individuals who are going through the same thing, and just being able to kind of talk about what's going on in your business and get that help and support, it absolutely does help calm the stress response down most of the time. But it absolutely does. It's a community, isn't it? And that's the other thing. It's a community vibe. And when back to the kind of bear analogy, if you're running away from the bear and you're on your own, in the olden days, you'd kind of successfully fight it off or run away, and then you'd run back to the tribe, and then you'd all kind of celebrate that the bear attack had passed together. And I think that's the community vibe that I get from Move, is that you can kind of come together with other people and feel like you are, in a tribe and you're not alone, which is definitely helpful for the stress response.
Who are the bears? That's what we need to know. We've all got them, haven't we? We've all got them. That's the thing.
Anything. Yeah, it can be. Yeah, absolutely anything. It can just be even your own, self-talk that can be the bear. That's when you're having doubts about in business, or is this going to work? I'm writing this book. Is it, are people going to read it? And that kind of self-talk is doubtful. And you can come onto Move and knock the ideas around with people, and it just helps. even deciding what the book cover was, you know, that was a stressor that people that moved took away because you guys all voted and I chose the one you said. So
I think it was Stephen Bartlett that came out the other day and said there was no such thing as imposter syndrome. Yeah, I mean, where do you stand on that? Do you think that we have got imposter syndrome, or is it actually just a kind of mindset that, you know, it's about support, getting the right support around you, and actually having the right kind of mindset and self-belief that means that you don't kind of fall into that trap?
Yeah. Hard to say, and I don't know in what context he said there is no imposter syndrome in terms of what was wrapped around that. I think that there are individuals out there who do experience that feeling of I'm not good enough, or you know, who am I to say I'm an expert in this? And I think those feelings are valid. Whether we have to label it imposter syndrome or not, it doesn't, you know, that doesn't matter. And as long as we can then, like you said, get the tools that we need individually to kind of help our mindset, then, you know, that's obviously got to be a better thing, hasn't it? So yeah, I work with a mindset coach myself, so because I think it's beneficial to kind of fill your head full of positive messages. I think you're always going to be more productive if you're telling yourself good things. So
and you're helping people all day long, as you say, and so therefore it's really important that you've got someone to release some of that off to as well, without actually giving them details, but just release the you know, sort of the feeling sometimes that you have after a day of it. I mean, I think we all need that. We all need
well, none of us can pour from an empty cup, as the old adage is, you know, goes. So, you know, especially in helper professions, then yeah, I think it's really important that we all get our own individual support when we're helping others.
If people want to get in touch with you, find out a little bit more, get some help and support, where's the best place to start? I mean, we're on LinkedIn at the moment. We're also going out on Twitter, Facebook, all at the same time. Hello, everybody. Where's the best place for people to come to start?
Yeah, I think so. The website is a great place to land, which we can put in the notes, I think, can't we, in terms of the
I can do that, and we could just say it now as well.
Yeah, okay, so it's re-nutrition.co.uk, and when you land on there, you can see a little button at the top says book now, and then you can just literally book in for a half-an-hour complimentary call, and we can discuss what's going on from a symptom point of view, and I can talk about what test package might be the most suitable for somebody. So that's definitely going to be the best way for people to kind of make contact. But like you said, I'm on social media as well. I tend to hang out most on Instagram, so I'm at re_nutrition on there if anybody wants to connect.
And we ought to say as well, both you and I move every Thursday morning when we're not too busy to not go. So if you do want to see Rachel, another place to do that would be at Move on a Thursday morning, 10 o'clock.
Exactly. We're all dishing out free tips and advice on there, aren't we? So the people, that's an excellent way for it to kind of come and get involved and just get support. So
that way you get hints and tips and advice across the board. You know, we've got financial advisors in that group. We've got Rachel in that group. We've got myself on the social media side of things on that group. Where else could you go to
exactly
for 90 minutes and be able to ask a question on any of those things and get help on a weekly basis? I don't know. I can't name another place on the planet. So there you go. There's the other way to do it. Come to Move, and you find that move-online.co.uk. Go there now. Fill your boots, book yourself onto a course, onto a weekly session. There we go. Thank you, Rachel, for coming in today, talking to Move TV. I hope it's not been a stressful episode for you.
I'm going off to breathe now.
going off to do some meditation now.
Yeah, absolutely. Drink a herbal tea and have a little moment. No, it hasn't been stressful. It's been lovely.
And book yourself a one-to-one with Rachel, and maybe you'll get 5 minutes of free meditation in the middle of the day.
You never know.
And you'll find out more about her business as well. It's been an absolute delight talking to you as normal. Folks, this has been Move TV. There will be another one along right next week. So stay tuned. If you haven't followed these as of yet, make sure you like us or follow us on any of the business pages in order to carry on receiving this wonderful free content, which is making your day so much better. Until next time, this is from me, Graham Cofen, from Rachel. Bye for now.